Welcome to the video edition of The Fourth Curtain, featuring this week's interview. Catch the extended audio version with Alex and Aaron's commentary wherever you get your podcasts. On with the show.
Hello, friends, and welcome to this week's Fourth Curtain. Today, we are joined by someone very special to me, a true gaming industry heavyweight, Mr. David Gardner. From the early days of Electronic Arts and leading Atari. Wow, you never hear those two in the same sentence like that. That's pretty huge. And now running London Venture Partners, David's career spanned decades, genres. I think you've seen it all. And, we're trying to show you some new stuff too with our studio. We'll talk about that in a little bit. He's been recognized as an officer of the Order of the British Empire.
What?
I kind of know what that is, but maybe you could.
Are you a knight?
I'm not a knight. I'm just a couple notches under, and it's the most disappointing because particularly Americans, everyone goes, "You're a knight," and then I have to back down the ladder a couple more notches.
Like a squire,
so it's knight, squire, and then what's under squire? Is it serf? I don't know. We'll get to it.
Okay,
we'll get to it. He was appointed the VP of Games for BAFTA. Is that still a gig of yours? It is, isn't it?
It is.
Yes.
Okay.
Which is also pretty amazing.
Yeah.
And at LVP, he's backing some of the most innovative studios in the world, including ours, Aaron. Aaron, did you know David's like our biggest champion? Did you know that?
No.
Did I?
Actually, I do.
I
always
don't know
talk
that I
about him.
introduced you.
He brings you up all the time. At least 3 times a day.
And I remember
you were a knight, though.
Last time you were over here, we were chatting, and you told me a little bit about your past, and it was not the past that I would have made up for you. So it's I'm really excited to have you as a guest.
I want to hear about Atari too. That's like
yes,
like what part of Atari? Atari has had many lives.
Yes. Oh.
Atari is maybe the most unique company in the game industry in terms of being a 9 lives act.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it's my first game love and my heartbreak and all of those things all together. But yeah. Do you want to start with Atari? Do we jump in?
I mean, we can if you want.
We just did.
What was the order? Was it Atari then EA or EA then Atari?
Mm-mm. Well,
actually,
it's an Atari sandwich. When I was when I was a kid, and the 2600, was out, and then of course I say of course, but not everyone may know, but they launched Atari 400s and 800s, the computers, and they really liked talking to me because I had sold my Apple II to have the money to buy an Atari 800. So I was a bit of a poster kid for them. And so I used to hang out with the Atari leadership a lot. I lived in Las Vegas, but they were up in Sunnyvale. And there's a longer story behind it, but eventually I ended up doing trade shows and events for them. And I was a bit of a mascot is what some of the marketing folks called me. So I used to hang out with, and through that, going to Consumer Electronics Show for Atari, I met Trip Hawkins, who founded Electronic Arts, and Trip hired me, and I went to EA, which was the right move because, of course, Atari crashed and burned, and then my CEO of Atari job, which came decades later, was to try to pull them out of the lost lands.
We gotta go a little deeper on that one in a minute. But I one thing that I made a note of is I don't know if you know this. I'm guessing you don't because you would have to listen to basically our entire catalog, which is not a bad idea. I recommend it. I recommend it to anybody. But you're one of the most mentioned names.
Weird.
I'm surprised. Peter Molyneux tells a story in the episode where he's on about how basically you discovered him. and
Oh my goodness!
put
I
him
thought he
on
was
the
going to tell the
map.
story of when I blew up his monitor because I plugged it in to his US voltage into UK voltage.
What?
He didn't, but you can tell.
That's a cool
Did that
story.
I still
happen?
feel a little bit guilty.
Was that before or after he had enough money to buy a new one?
Yeah, it was definitely before. Yeah, that's why I think it hurt.
Oops.
I think it hurt so much. Yeah.
But you do get mentioned a lot. And I think in my in your role now, like as a investor and a partner in a venture fund, you are kind of a super connector too. I mean, you have this incredible network, and I'm just what is that a thing? Like, is that like a personality type? Not like collecting relationships, but I guess valuing them,
Mm.
and knowing how to. It's more than just networking, It's sort of like,
Well, it doesn't have to be, but I
maybe,
hope it is. I mean, I
yeah,
I find I'm excited by people. So new people, hearing about what they're passionate about, what their skills are. And one of the lessons I learned, I think, in management through my years at EA was how it takes a team, and how often, to be a good leader, you have to be a good servant and get the heck out of the way and enable it for other people, because some people are making some incredible game, or some people have some incredible kind of marketing campaign, or like the branding around EA Sports. That was an incredible piece of work that endures to today. And so there are lots of people. So I do love, and I love, and I loved international. I mean, I am an American, came from being born in Long Beach and da 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 da, but I love the world. I love international. I live now in Europe. I came to London to set up EA all those years ago, and it was the most exciting thing. And it still is exciting. Every time I go to a new city, I'm so excited. And yeah, I just love that. So I think I would answer your question to say there is some personality in it. It is something that brings me energy and joy. So it's easier for me to do. And I love whenever I'm hearing, I was on a call today with a portfolio company, and they're trying to figure out, what's the kind of current way to handle app store optimization. So when people search, you get discovered. I was like, oh, these 3 people, you got to talk to these. They'll be so good, and they're going to feel good because they're helping you. I feel good because I've helped connect you. So it is my dopamine is helping and helping make connections.
yeah, that's interesting. It's like, I wonder if, I don't know. I approach a lot of the things that I do from like a problem solving like mindsets. Like entrepreneurship often is a lot of problem solving. You get
Yeah.
yourself into scenarios that
Yeah.
weren't necessarily on the plan. Okay, what next? Same with like coding, is that it's a lot of problem solving. Even cooking, it's like something didn't kind of get, it's too salty now. What do I do? And I kind of wonder if
Lemon
maybe
juice.
like when you're in a conversation, yeah, you never have that problem. Because you probably have your own chef, so
No,
that's
no,
your
I
problem.
love cooking, but I said lemon juice. I think add lemon juice to cut the
Okay,
more
all right,
acid.
there you go, perfect. But like when you are in a conversation with somebody, when anybody's in a conversation with somebody and they're kind of like sharing a problem they're trying to solve, I imagine some people's reaction might be, oh, well, if you do X and Y, that might fix your problem. Whereas maybe your go-to is, I know like 4 or 5 people who are the best at solving this problem,
Oh, like Rolodex.
and I can connect you to them.
Yeah. So is that how you were in like school too? Like, or is that something you know what I mean? Like, were you like setting up friends and, oh, I know who you should hang out with, and
I,
you know what I mean?
that's a
That's a good
really
question.
good. School was tough for me. I did not enjoy school. In fact, I didn't complete school. So I am a high school dropout.
Yeah.
This is what Aaron wants to. This was where Aaron was going with that. I know
Yeah.
when he
Anyone
starts
with me?
talking
Anyone else dropped
about
out here?
School
Anyone?
sucks. Yeah.
stop. Well, we had this is an often debated topic for
Yeah.
us about the value of like the expensive higher education.
Yeah.
And it has changed over the years, but I would love, yeah. So you didn't go to college? Sounds like you sort of tapped
Did
out
not.
in the high school years because you got
Yeah.
really close with Trip. Is that
Yeah,
that age
I
or later?
finished I kind of stopped going to school around 15. I was working in the local computer store and, increasing my hours and going more and more. And they were like, "Hey, aren't you supposed to be in school?" "Yeah, I have a sick day." I don't know. I kept making up excuses until finally I got busted. And then
Where was that?
that was in Las
15?
Vegas.
That's Las
Oh,
Vegas.
cool.
Okay.
Yeah,
What were
my
you doing
mom
in
had
Las Vegas?
Well, we had moved. My father had died we started in LA. Then my dad hit retirement age. He was a school teacher in math. And so
The irony.
I didn't know, but my family's from Mississippi. So
Oh.
we moved back to Mississippi. It's like, what are we doing here? This place is awful. They have, eight people on the same phone number. We had party lines. There was, we were we lived literally on a farm. There was no technology around other than the propane gas tank, which I would open up and freeze the grass and kind of experiment with things. And I would
Nice.
write to Hewlett Packard to get their incredible catalog, which was like a encyclopedia. It was a hardbound book, and I would anxiously wait. It would take a few weeks, and it would come in the post in the mail, and it was like, yeah, it was. I probably shouldn't say porn, but it was like, it was digital porn. And I looked through every page and had all these weird measuring instruments, but they had programmable calculators, and I saved up to get my, HP. And anyways, where am I heading with that story? Oh, we were in Mississippi because of my dad, and then he died, and my mom was like, "Let's get the heck out of here." And I said, "Yes, let's get out." So we were heading back to the West Coast, and my mom stopped in Las Vegas. We were taking the U-Haul across the country, and she said, 49-cent breakfasts and houses for 50,000. We found home. So we just stayed. So Las Vegas, and it
Yes.
actually wasn't a bad place.
Yeah.
I mean, it continues, of course, to grow. And I've got friends that were literally from high school, like the Westwood guys, and
Oh, yeah.
the computer store was a bit of a hub for all of us. But it was all the big shows at the convention center. So we had CES, we had Comdex is gone, but CES continues to thrive. And so that was a major networking moment. And I used to sneak in. I was a kid. I was too young. I wasn't allowed to go in, but I would sneak in and meet companies. I was obsessed with computers and companies. Those were my two targets. And I would even go around. I can't believe I did this, and I wouldn't let my own kids do this now, but I would take the bus downtown. I was at like 12. I would knock on the office doors and say, "Do you have a computer?" And they would be a bit shocked that some kid would, and they would say, "Well, yes or no." I said, "Can I see it?" And more than half the time, they would be delighted, and they would
That's
show me. And then
amazing.
that is how I made my connections. And then I got introduced to, I went into City Hall. They had some kind of mainframe, and teletypes that had everything was coming out on paper. And his brother-in-law ran the local computer store, and he said, "Oh, you should go to Century 23, where the computer store is, and down on Spring Mountain Road in Las Vegas." So I started cycling down there, and that's where I got deep into the whole world of computers.
Wow. And this was just you knocking on doors and
Literally
asking.
knocking on doors. Yeah.
Okay.
Can I see your computer?
There's a lesson for you kids. If you don't ask, the answer is no, and don't be afraid to, I guess borderline creepy. But if you're 12,
Yeah, I was pre-creepy.
you're
Yeah.
creepy. Okay, that's amazing. Okay,
And that opened up,
And
and that's what then.
is this how you got to meet some people at
Yes.
Atari? Because
So
you
yes,
basically
is
crashed
exactly
their...
how.
What would you do when they let you in to see the computer? Like, what happens
So
in that moment?
they would always talk. They were like this and that. They would explain. Oh, some had more advanced stuff. Some had CRTs. Some had, some had the old mag tapes. Some had rigid drives that were in huge cartridges that had be perfectly air sealed, and they would be kind of dropped in. And then I got a job at one of those companies when I was a couple years older, and they were selling PDP-11s, these digital decks. They were called
In
DEC.
Vegas.
Oh yeah.
In Vegas, and I was writing code in Dieball, which was digital's business-oriented language.
Whoa,
It was
I
a
don't even know
COBOL
what
clone.
that is. It's a COBOL alternative. Okay.
Yeah, I can't remember any of it now. But and I was Then I worked at the computer store, and you had to to sell a computer, you'd have to set someone's database up and kind of do the basic programming for them to get it kind of functioning. But it was I started being really interested in all the computer things. And then as Atari started thinking about computers, I literally started every day after school. I would call the phone number. I think it was a 1-800 number, and I called Atari. I had to get transferred to the marketing department, and I'd have a new set of questions because I'd been reading and thinking, and so I had a bunch of questions, and they started to know me by name, and they expected my call, and then that's went on for months, and then it was January coming up, and they said, "David, we're coming to Las Vegas. We'd love to meet you," and they were really so nice. I mean, it's really crazy. I had no idea I was being a nuisance, but I just wouldn't stop.
How old is this?
I was 15.
This is
And
15. Okay.
and at that time, and then
Chutzpah. That's what that was
Chutzpah,
called.
and then I thought I better get some business cards printed up because I thought, I was super serious about that. I had no,
Yes.
so I got my cards printed up, Gardner Computer Service, and then I went and met meet the marketing department who all knew me, and they were absolutely amazing. I had to literally get snuck in because I was far too young. 18 was the minimum age, so they kind of hustled me in the back and got me past. I got to see the booth. Oh my gosh, that was
'cause
so
it's a
exciting. The
casino.
Atari booth. Wow. Oh my gosh. And I think they had launched Star Raiders, which to me was the ultimate.
Oh,
It still
yeah.
is the ultimate.
I've seen
I had
pictures of it.
I may have lifted one of the pre-production cartridges to take home to my computer. I don't know. Which I'm sorry for that.
So
That
wait,
was the wrong thing to
are
do.
you a gamer at this time, or are you just like a techie guy?
You're everything when you're at that part of the industry, right? Where the Apple II had just come out, and the Atari 800 had come out, and yeah, you're playing games, you're writing code, you're doing everything, kind of trying to get the cassette to load, and somebody comes out with a floppy drive, and all that kind of stuff. But the Atari people really scooped me up. They were transformative. They actually introduced me to the guy Ray Kassar, who was the CEO at the time. And he kind of chuckled when I chatted with him, and everyone, now as I look back in my mind's eye, I realized it was funny because a kid was acting so precocious, but it got me a gig. They then said, "Would you come to Chicago and demonstrate our computers?" I was like, "Wow, someone's taking me." So they paid for my ticket, and I'd done my research. I wanted to fly TWA because they had an L1011 Lockheed TriStar, and I was into all the geeky
Wow,
things.
gold,
Yes.
man! They got to make a
And they
movie
took
about
me.
you.
They flew me. They gave me. They gave me. If like I 3 or 4 nights. I forget the name of the hotel on like Wacker Drive in Chicago, and maybe it was Lower Wacker. I don't remember. And we went to CES and at McCormick Center, and wow, that was it. And then they started staying in touch. And then there was a TV show being filmed in Las Vegas. It was one of those really bad daytime TV shows. I think it was Mike, gosh, what was he called? I can't remember the name. It might come to me, but it was one of those things, and Atari had sponsored it. So I was brought on to demonstrate Pac-Man, and there was this comedian named Rip Taylor who was was on there, and so I'm on there as a kid, and they gave me like $500 to go buy clothes, and I went down to the the local, and that started getting me involved in like having to dress up and do all these things. So yeah, that started life, and that's how I ran into Trip at one of the shows, and then Trip offered me a job, and I moved to Silicon Valley, and that was the beginning of the new world.
That's okay, awesome. So that when did that happen? When did you move to go?
Yeah,
start
where's the job?
How old were you?
So I was 17 when I went to when I first met Trip. I met him in Chicago at CES, and he was with a guy named Bruce Zweig, who was the creator of Lightning Type, was an early kind of touch typing tutor on the Apple. And I loved learning to type. I thought that was such a fun thing. And he came
it's
through
your favorite game genre, isn't it, Aaron?
What's
like
that?
House of the Dead?
Yeah, I love typing games. Yeah.
Typing games?
Yeah, like
Mavis Beacon?
Like when you're going through a game and it's like or like through a level, and then a word comes up, it's like livery, and you have to spell livery really fast, and then it shoots the character or something. Or
well, it was not as advanced, but it was heading in the direction.
Yeah, typing games are the best.
And Bruce was this guy that came to the computer store. And again, back to the connecting thing, I remember this guy. He was so exciting because he made games. They were in Ziploc bags. They had a hole punch in the center so they could be put on the peg.
Awesome.
And it was a photocopied color thing of Lightning Type. And at that time, I can't remember if he was on cassette or CD or floppy drive. But anyway, so he was, and so I chatted with him, and he enjoyed the chat. And then amazingly, I ran into him in the aisle of Chicago CES, and he was with this guy who I didn't know, Trip, and Trip was just finishing his job at Apple and just had this idea for a new games company. And we had a big argument because there was a company that had games for the Atari 2600, one of the first hacks into the system because it was a closed system, but they figured out a way to put a cartridge in, have 2 audio cassette leads come out, and you could download your games from audio cassette into the PRAM of this cartridge and play a game. And Trip thought this was the most incredible thing, and I thought it was never going to work. And so we had a big argument. And then at the end, Bruce said, "How old is this kid, do you think?" And Trip's, "I don't know, 21, 22." And I had just turned 16, just had my driver's license. So and it was then Trip said, "That's, I really enjoyed talking to you. I'm going to hire you." He literally said I was going to hire you. And I was so excited, went home to tell my mom, "I've got a job." But of course, I had no way of getting a hold of Trip. There was no internet, no, you could dial directory inquiries, maybe that was it. But and it was in Las Vegas again. In 6 months later, there was Comdex, and I was walking the aisles, and I literally bumped into Trip in the aisle, and it was like he said, "There you are." I didn't know how I was gonna, and it was like fate. I mean, literally from. So there you go. So then we exchanged numbers and addresses, and then I flew up to interview in California, and it was there were only 8 employees, so it was I had to interview with everybody for 2 hours. It took 2 days.
Wow. Okay. So I got to imagine those first 8 employees that you became cohort with, probably some notable folks in there. Did that include the likes of like Bing Gordon and
Bing was there?
Folks?
Yeah. Bing, who stayed in the industry, Tim Mott, who stayed and was big. I think he started Macromedia. He's done tons of things and did venture. And I think he may, I'm not sure Tim ever retires, but he's always around. A guy named Rich Melman, who came out of VisiCalc, he was there. He's a VC. I guess that's what you have to do. I'm surprised Trip didn't become a VC. I think he would have been extremely good at it. But
what's the gig though? So what did you get hired for? What is your job?
I was marketing analyst, and I was the only one that actually had ever worked at retail. So I knew the margin structures, the suppliers. I actually knew how the stores worked and sold games. So I helped set up the trade, the terms and conditions and the trade thing. And then I started training the sales reps because I kind of played the games and I had some sales experience. Then I set up customer service, which I absolutely, sadly hated. But I started getting the first international post through, and we got telexes from our distributors needing help. And so I started supporting the international crowd. And that was kind of really interesting. And then my neighbors started saying, "Oh, I went to, Europe one year." And I started hearing about these other places in the world, which I didn't really know about. And I decided, I really want to go do that. And I had saved a lot of frequent flyer points on Pan Am because back in the day, they flew from like San Francisco to the East Coast, and I was traveling all around, teaching the reps how to sell the games. And so I had enough points, and I went on my first free trip to London, and the distributor in London picked me up in a Rolls Royce of all things. Now in hindsight, that was a bad move. That shows they were making way too much money on our games.
We need to have a talk about your wholesale costs.
Exactly. Exactly.
That's amazing. All right, Pan Am. Okay, that's amazing.
Yeah.
I'm glad you used those points because
they were
don't last forever, folks. So you do your first overseas trip, and you're how old at this point?
I was 19, I think, because I remember I was too young to drink in America, but I could order a beer and stuff.
Wow,
like that.
That's how you remember. That's so good.
So there is something really interesting just from that. I don't know what this perspective is, but Aaron, you and I talk about college a lot, and David, you didn't need it clearly.
No, but you know what? So it's taken a long time to process. I read that Malcolm Gladwell book. I think it's called Outliers, where he talks about 10,000 hours. Did you ever come across this? Because he said,
I know the concept. I don't think I read that book, but
he was trying to explain why do all the great hockey players in Canada, why were they born? I can't quite remember how the logic goes, like September to November, but it's because when they go for the trials, um, they are the oldest physically, and then they are more able compared to the younger ones, and then they get selected, and then because they're selected, they then get the most number of hours of training. And he then starts using that example in lots of scenarios, including Bill Gates. And Bill Gates had access to compute. He had access to computers. He had time and money. And then, because partly, I guess, his dad was like a lawyer, and they had computers. And then at the university, he kind of didn't go to class and went to computer hall, to computer lab. And it was the same for me. I had access. It was the very beginning. I mean, I literally met Steve Wozniak selling Apple IIs in LA, and I bought like serial number 2500. He was kind of a somebody because it was cool, the Apple II, but he wasn't what he, became, and, Jobs and everything else. So it was, and I used to hang out with, no one cared that I was a kid. They cared I had an Apple II. So they would invite me to all the clubs. I was hanging out only with adults. And that just, I had access and the time. So I had my 10,000 hours as a kid before, like the same time as the adults were getting their 10,000 hours. So I just got sucked into the thing with everybody else.
I just want to say, David, that's a nice explanation, but school sucks.
Stop. I hated it. I hated it. I used to be
Alex
bullied.
cringes.
I was
thinking about this morning. What a serendipitous conversation, because I was just thinking about my experience in school, and I needed it.
Yeah,
I was not ready at 17 to.
Yeah.
I mean, I have some chutzpah. I'm not afraid to pick up the phone and call, but I needed the exploration to find things that
I'm just kidding. I think school is important for some. It definitely does create a place for people to to study and to work together and network and all that.
It taught me how to think. I'm definitely a different person after having been in college than beforehand.
I kind of sometimes wish I had gone to college, but we did, when we were a billion-dollar company, had all these executives. We did some things. I put a program together. The California team went to Stanford. We went to London Business School, and I loved it. I couldn't believe how exciting it was and how fun it was to have that kind of learning environment. And I said, gosh, if I knew this was university, I might have gone. But everybody said, no, this is what graduate school looks like. University is just getting pissed and going crazy and doing all this stuff. And I wasn't keen on that. I was excited by the technology and learning and business, and school was too. School did one good thing for me. There was one class. We had special ed in our school system. It was like code 54 on your thing. And 54 was the kids that couldn't cope and the kids that were above average and they tried to create a special program for. So I was in special ed, and fortunately I was given space to make up my own course, and I did basic programming. And it was a mistake because I thought it was the basics of programming. So I bought the book and started learning, and then I found out, it's the language called basic. And but I got to do binary numbers and basic. That was my course, and I was in 6th grade, so I was 12, and I remember that very clearly. And that they had that kind of weird program they were trying to do, and that kind of freedom was amazing, and that gave me some space. But I don't like the factory element of school because I think people learn at different rates in different ways. And I wish we had a different system, and maybe we will put more flexibility with cohorts and AI helping track and recommend.
That's one thing that I think technology, particularly, the YouTube era was a huge learning boon, I think, for a lot of people, myself included. And I'm seeing the same thing with AI, just as a research, learning, self-directed exposure to knowledge, etc. is very fascinating. So
super fascinating.
That's a whole topic. But what were the early days of EA? What was that like?
So much fun.
You got there. It was 9 people. You increased the head count by 12%
between my
when
interview
you were
and starting. My interview was, I think, back in November, and I started January 3rd, and so I was employee 11. So they hired a couple people before me, and wow. So it was classic Silicon Valley startup, as far as I can tell. We had big backers. First of all, the founders were Tripp had gone both to Stanford and to Harvard. So, he had first-class education, and he was a senior executive at Apple. So he was able to go sell the venture community on this idea. And he based it on the Marshall McLuhan theory of the kind of different forms of media. And he would tell the story that, first we had the written word, and that was huge, and, the Gutenberg press. And then he talked about, then we had radio, and that was audio, and that kind of created, the next big boom in media. Then we had television, which combined, both visual and audio. Now we have interactivity, and that's going to be bigger than ever. And it just
right.
wasn't. It wasn't for like 25, 30 years. And it's like, we're letting everybody down. But now we have it on the chart. We're still insecure about how big we are. But we are by far the biggest media. But we're not numerically, we have very deep monetization. That's why the total spend on games is much higher than any other media. But a big film still has more societal impact than a big game. Although maybe GTA 6 may set the new record.
I would not be surprised. Yeah.
But so EA, Tripp was and is, he's a genius, and he could preach it. I believed everything, and I loved it. It filled a hole. I had understand. It was like purpose, and we had our speech, and it was getting that deep kind of drinking from that fire hose. And then I came to Europe in '86 to do some research on what EA should do, but then ended up staying and ultimately leading EA in Europe. But it was, I had that imprint like a duck, that was the, I did everything the way I was.
The reality distortion
completely.
Field.
The reality distortion that he learned. Tripp, honestly, he says it was Steve Jobs that he learned it from. He used to watch in amazement, the absolute master. And I think that, that wasn't always helpful.
We'll be right back. If you like what you're hearing, like and follow the show wherever you get your podcasts. And now, a word from our sponsors. Great games aren't just made, they're crafted. Pixel by pixel, idea by idea. Amber doesn't just develop games, Amber forges the future of play, one project at a time. From the magic makers at Disney to the tech giants at Amazon and Warner Media, the biggest names in the industry trust Amber to turn their wildest ideas into reality. Why? Because the talented teams at Amber believe in pushing every boundary, breaking every mold, and having a bit of fun while they're at it. Need a partner who knows the game and plays to win? Amber has the talent, the passion, and a global network that's ready to roll. So let's skip the loading screen and get straight to the action. Discover how Amber can power up your next project at amberstudio.com. Do you want your game to live forever? To supercharge it with immense powers of endless content, a buzzing gamer community, immortality, and coin? CurseForge for Studios, an exclusive service for visionary game developers, allows you to add safe, cross-platform mods to your game and enjoy all the benefits of user-generated content without any of the risks. With CurseForge for Studios, you can harness the creativity of our 165,000 devoted creators and the traffic of 43 million monthly gamers. You can also level up with premium mods and grant your game new revenue streams. Trusted by AAA studios, CurseForge for Studios is an immortality potion for your game. Enter studios.curseforge.com and join the UGC era. Leveling up your game dev career but not sure where to start?
Maybe you're trying to break into the industry, looking to connect with other people who are making games.
Consider joining the International Game Developers Association, the IGDA, the world's largest nonprofit member-driven professional association serving all individuals who create games.
I was in the IGDA in Chicago, met a lot of people, great way to network.
The IGDA exists to support and empower game developers around the world in achieving fulfilling and sustainable careers.
Discounts,
educational and advocacy-based resources,
mentorship,
and solidarity across 160 plus chapters.
To join the IGDA, visit igda.org/membership and use the code IGDA 4th Curtain 15, no spaces there,
to get 15% off 1- and 2-year memberships, as well as a student membership.
Joining the IGDA is a great move for your career, and as a nonprofit supporting everyone making games, it's a great move for the whole community. Join today. Hey listeners, it's Alex from The Fourth Curtain.
And Darren here. We want to give a quick shout out to the team at High Vibe PR.
High Vibe PR is our boutique communications firm. They're all about companies and brands defining the future of gaming, entertainment, and culture.
Look, when you're doing something big, you need the right people to help you tell your story. And High Vibe PR, they're the best at making it happen.
Absolutely. They've helped us at Look North World level up our messaging, connect to the right audiences, and stay ahead of the curve in this ever-changing industry.
So, if you're looking for a PR partner who gets gaming and entertainment like no one else, check them out at highvibepr.com.
That's highvibepr.com. Go give them a look. You won't regret it.
And now, back to the show.
It was.
Well,
I'm sorry.
I tell kids growing up that the probably the most important skill for them to learn if they want to do anything is how to sell your ideas, how to sell yourself.
A lot to say about that. And if you can sell with some kind of authenticity as well, it's super that we're missing. America has skyrocketed in competence around selling, and it's been late, I think, to the authenticity party. But I think it's coming, and I think it's slightly.
We have a real authenticity problem here. If you haven't noticed, we have an aggression problem. Actually, secretly, I think we have an asshole problem, but that's a whole different conversation.
Yeah.
But okay, so you go over to start the European office. Like, how did you get that
job?
gig? Like, it is a little bit of a jump from
Yeah.
I'm gonna I know retail, so I can help set up the retail program. I can help train customer service to I'm now going to basically start the European and run the European operation. That's maybe that's one or two latter steps.
About 2 years before that, I ended up supporting all the kind of international sales efforts from California, and we were reaching a point where we had to either renew our licensing agreement in Europe or set up our own operation. And we did decide they said, you're not in a relationship. You don't have any kids. You're expendable. You go for 3 months and just go live over there for 3 months and just go try to understand, what is this Sinclair Spectrum thing? And, why are they putting games on cassettes? And what is how does it all work over there? And so I was sent to London, and thank God on an expense account, because it was expensive at the time. And
It
it still is. Yeah. and that again was another absolute life-changing moment. It changed everything. I just couldn't go back. London was the first big city. I mean, I'd been near San Francisco, and you go to San Francisco, but you realize it's actually a little boutique city. It's a it's not a city. It's not like
not a
New York,
metropolis.
not a metropolis. And anyways, it was again just mind-blowing. And I went with all that fervor, both as an American, but brainwashed. The EA, I was totally brainwashed by EA, and so I was selling it and preaching it everywhere out there too. And everyone, kind of sniggered. Very British, the way they would kind of.
Is that a British word, sniggered?
Yeah, it's not American. I don't even know. It's kind of, they would make fun. They would kind of make a sound and make that kind of face.
Okay.
That's so good. I didn't even know that wasn't.
See, now, so I've known you for a while, and it wasn't until you sort of told me some of this backstory that I knew that you came from Mississippi, which I never would have guessed in a million billion years. You're British through and through to me.
Yeah.
So
well, technically, I am British, and most of my life has been in Britain because I moved at 20. I think I just turned 21. So, literally most of my life.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. So you didn't come
childhood
back
in America, adulthood.
You got off the Pan Am flight to Grigorian for your first 3 months, and you're like, I don't use points anymore. I ain't going back. British now.
That's cool.
Where's the fish and chips? Okay. All right. So, after the 3 months, was it then basically you were starting a business there?
Yeah,
Is that
I mean,
basically did it from the ground up, or did they send
that's
some more reinforcements
we
for
did
you?
we did yeah, there was a very important addition because literally I was a kid with no college education. So I think they eventually thought maybe we should have a grown up as well.
Yeah.
And they sent over Mark Lewis, who had um, been at the company for a few years and had done a variety of jobs, and including being a producer of some of the games. And he was a grown up, but interestingly, he in his childhood had done an exchange year at one of the British boarding schools, so he actually knew the UK reasonably well. And so he came over, and we shared a flat and started hiring people and thinking about how to get games converted to the different formats and how to package them. And we carried some of the same ideas, like we were going to sell direct. And one of the EA had a few key strategies, and one was to own its own retail presence. So it went direct to the retail stores, had its own sales team, didn't use distributors. We had some unique packaging back in the day. The first packages were record album style, so they unfolded beautifully, but they were, and the CD would, the floppy disk, but eventually the CD would just slide into a pocket. That was really beautifully done. Incredible art. We had like photographers from the Rolling Stones shooting the artists and the cover pictures, and so it was all very very art high end. And again, Bing was one of the huge influencers in all this. He had spent some time in advertising, and we just had a very kind of moneyed, I think we were maybe the first gaming company with venture capital as well. There were like Broderbund. I know you talked about Miss, but Broderbund was one of the competitors in Sierra Online, but they were shipping things in plastic bags.
Right.
Until
Yeah.
we, and then eventually
Yeah.
people went into full color boxes and stuff like
The
that.
huge
Real pay.
boxes.
So for the kids, like back in this sort of whole era of games, and that lasted for a while. Games were bought in a store, so they were physically manufactured. And this bit that you're talking about, the direct retail presence, is expensive to do and very important, because what people don't realize is that all that merchandise, when you go into a store and you see like a big display that's filled with, in the day it would have been the first version of Madden or something. Today at the supermarket, it's your Snap Pop or whatever. That's all paid for by the company that makes it. So EA would be paying for this
Yeah.
shelf space.
Yeah.
And sometimes the stores, they don't put it upright, they don't put it in the right place. And we used to have these people called detailers. We would spend money to hire these people that would go store to store and make sure the product was facing the right way and none of it was damaged, all this junk. And it actually has a huge impact on what people buy. Because is my stuff isn't at eye level? What are you doing here, store retailer? Move my product up so it's eye level, all that kind of stuff, which we don't deal with anymore because it's all digital, but was a big part of the business.
But that
back
was part of
then.
the filtering system of, that it reduced the amount of choice to something discernible for the consumer. Now we have whatever it is, 1,000 games a day if it's
Infinite.
released.
Now we have infinite choice, which
Infinite
is
choice. Yeah.
so
it's a mixed blessing. I mean, I'm also for it. I mean, we've certainly enjoyed, it's been good news. I mean, I was, part of the early investment team into Supercell, and literally they were 160 people, making more profit than Electronic Arts because they had 12,000 people, and they did it. I remember we went to Japan. I'm kind of jumping around here, but we went to Japan to launch Supercell, and I had spent a decade trying to get EA in Japan correctly, and it's employee heavy and a nightmare. And they went in. We spent 1 week there. We hired one employee. They did a beautiful job on localization and partnered with Gung Ho, who had Puzzles and Dragons, and they kind of did a collaborative event. And with one employee and that effort, they just ticked the boxes on the Apple and Google iTunes and Google Play Store, and they did $65 million in revenue in a quarter.
Wow.
And it was like, wow, that was mind blowing.
The times they have changed.
They have just, yeah. Anyways, so
okay.
yeah.
How well?
So
Yes. Okay. So the rise of EA in Europe,
and it was
then,
so
like,
much
did you-
fun. I mean, we it was, you know, we had so much success. And of course, it was, you know, we nearly died, you know, multiple times and all that. I'm forgetting all of the, you know, the death-defying stories, but then eventually it just started working. You know, the industry started working, the consoles started working, and we were and all that stuff that was dreamed about, which took literally 10 years to build. I mean, everyone always forgets. Everyone thinks, you know, success is overnight, but you have all the confidence problems, you make all your mistakes, you all the things you thought about that you thought were good ideas. A lot of them are good ideas, but they just need time to kind of get into orbit and for the magnetic attraction to start spinning powerfully, and
Mhm.
and all the direct to retail, all that stuff at first was super expensive. The company was losing tons of money. It wasn't going to make it. And then we shipped Skyfox, which was Ray Toby's kind of flight game, and boom, you know, we had a hit, and there's nothing like a hit to change the fortunes of a business. And it was that then the flywheel started turning, and then EA grew and grew and grew, and for the longest time was the biggest games company. But now there are, you know, many big companies, including you know, Take-Two and Microsoft. Microsoft might be the biggest games company,
Yeah.
actually.
They own everybody right
That's
now.
Mhm.
yeah, so that'd be interesting. But it's something we're trying to tear down for next week's summit, just to try to understand that. But so it was an incredible ride, but not just because of I mean, the success certainly helps because you have that feel good, that dopamine, that. But for me personally, it was learning all the cultures of Europe. It was taking what was EA's culture and trying to knit together and stitch together this team. We had 1,200 employees, and trying to get them to be like EA, even though they spoke different languages and we had different, you know, kind of consumer cultures and all of that. And it worked. And we could put the company first. And we used to go to, we did things like went to Club Med and Disneyland and partied after we hit sales targets. And it was amazing to watch the company culture. And it was the most gratifying thing. That, as I look back, I mean, we knew we were having a good time, but if I look back, that was like a once in a lifetime opportunity, being that in that
It
kind
was
of
a-
growth.
Yeah, it was a
Incredible.
special time and a special place.
Yeah.
So then, so what happened? Like the transition, your personal transition from there to Atari, was that the jump?
Yeah,
EA to
so
Atari?
yeah, EA continued to get bigger, and then they kind of sucked me back in after 20 something years of being in Europe. They said, "Come back, you know, we need you back in headquarters because you and a number of others have a shot at being the next CEO. But if you're not here, you know, learning at headquarters, then, you know." So, you know, I did feel like not my company exclusively, but I was, you know, there from the founding days. So I thought, well, it was my duty. I should go back and do that. But I had no idea how different it was. I used to go, I literally went back every month anyways, and you have, you know, product review meetings and sales forecasts and everything. So I was all back all the time, but I was only back for like 48 hours, and I go back to Europe, and you'd kind of go in and do your thing. I had no idea the complexity of the politics and the relationships back at headquarters. I was in my own little dominion over there, which no one.
You had no politics in your organization.
Well, I said that to people. We don't have politics. We don't agree. We don't think we should have politics. And they all laughed and said, "You don't have politics because you're running it. There's politics under you. And when you go over to America, you're not running it. Now you're in the politics." So
True, David. Clip that, Alex. That's a clip right there. Yeah.
So
It's good to be the king.
What
It's
do you
good to be
mean
the king.
politics?
Even if your kingdom is small, it's good to be the king.
Yeah, that's right.
That's so good.
Wait, so this is after 20 years. So this is now
Yeah, I was
what
in the
year?
early
It's
2000s.
early 2000s. So is this the Riccatello era?
So
Or
Riccatello
not
had
quite
left.
yet?
So I had survived the first wave of the Riccatello era.
Okay.
And I say that because he was
Survived.
smart and hard charging. We all had to step up. And it was a hard charge, but the company grew like crazy. And so we learned a lot. And I was insecure because I thought I'm going to lose my job. this guy was a big packaged goods guy, had launched all these big brands, and I forget, I'm sure he's been to some amazing business school or whatever. And I'm a high school dropout, and I've got this big job running all of EA Europe, and I don't want to lose my favorite thing in the world. And so I was super intimidated. But we,
Yep, you have a little imposter syndrome.
Oh my
because
Lord.
of that.
So much. I mean, I own it.
After
now.
20 years,
Yep.
years of like
Totally.
growing that business to such success, still felt imposter
Completely.
syndrome. Yeah.
Completely. And I kept running. I tried to go back to university. I tried to go to school. I quit. I go to London Business School and get some official teaching so I can know what I'm doing. So it was the Larry Probst was the CEO of the whole business, and so
Right.
I came back to work for Larry, and quite a lot of the old crew, really. Nancy Smith was running North America, so these are people I'd literally grown up with. I mean, I was a kid, and now I'm whatever I was, 50, 40 something, I guess, it was like being with family, and it was exciting to do stuff. But there were a lot of other people that were good. They were good at their job, but they wanted the top job, and so they were doing power moves and jujitsus and things that I just like. Wow, I wasn't. I was just thinking we're all. I've drunk the Kool-Aid from the past, and I have to sadly say it was very different. I mean, I didn't appreciate. How the company had changed in many ways. It's still very successful, and it's gone through its kind of phases like all businesses do. But I wasn't able to keep up. I didn't have the deft touch to do it, and I was weirdly homesick, but I was having reverse culture shock being in the States. I loved California. I mean, amazing place to live up in the Bay Area. But there was this film that came out about the Queen, and I think it was Helen Mirren that was playing the Queen.
Yep.
And I remember going down. There was a cinema down at the end of Page Mill Road. It was a kind of a really nice cinema at El Camino and Page Mill. I went into this big thing, and it was reasonably well attended. It wasn't a sellout, and I saw the imagery of Britain, and I saw the Queen, and it was being very seriously played, and I heard all the Americans laughing like, oh, this, how ridiculous. And I thought, this is the Queen. You can't, this isn't ridiculous. This is
Traitor, David, you're a traitor. No, I'm just.
And I sort of realized, I thought, I don't know who I am. I don't know where I should be, and I'm confused. And so
Wow.
we made a tough
That's
decision.
amazing.
And my wife, who didn't want to move my wife's British. She didn't want to move to the States initially. And after 3 years, she was like, no way am I leaving. I had to pull her out like a cat with her
It's okay.
claws.
So you got a flip-flop on that. Okay.
Completely.
That's wow. She's like, this California thing is great.
Yeah,
It's like
awesome.
it's not
She
raining
loved
every
it.
day.
Starbucks.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah.
And she just had the best friend. And Key was her best friend from from university in Britain, had moved over because her husband went to Stanford for business school, and they ended up staying. So she had her best friend of all time. She made all kinds of new friends, and Americans, compared to the Brits, are very open to new people. So she just made tons of friends and had a great time. Anyways, my kids, though, started with English accents and ended up with weird American twang. So I also thought maybe it was time to kind of get my old kids back. So I took everyone home. I gave my wife what I call the golden ticket. I said, if after a year of being back in England, you're not happy, you open the golden ticket, we'll go wherever you want.
Huh.
And so that's how we negotiated
Does she still have the golden ticket? Does
Yeah,
she
that's
still
a
have
very
it?
good question. She didn't open it. And sometimes,
You're in Sweden now,
Sometimes.
dude. Or Switzerland. Which one is it? Sweden or Switzerland?
yeah, just on holiday.
Oh,
Yeah,
on
just
holiday. Okay.
vacation. Yeah. So she reluctantly moved, and the kids for 5 years all cried about it, but they're pleased.
Did
that
they cry with American accents or with
Yeah.
British?
Okay. Well, so you kind of got
That was the end of my EA life. That's when that was it.
Aaron
had
and
to
I,
resign.
we had an EA experience that it wasn't quite exactly like either of yours, but I could kind of relate to.
COVID was
The-
involved in ours too. We had a lot of-
Yeah. All right. But so you're back in the UK. And so you basically you just decided to move back and
Yep.
leave EA. That was the
Unemployed.
decision. It wasn't like I'm going to go somewhere else. It's like I'm
Nope. I just
going to
just
time out,
going to
pause
get
on
back
things. Yeah.
to the UK, figure
So
it
that was
out.
a life choice for you.
That was a life choice, and
Good for
probably
you.
confused. I remember the ambassador phoning from Britain to say I was going to be given this OBE, but you just mentioned on the opening remarks, which is not a knighthood. I didn't get the right, the top one, and I remember feeling very ordinary in California because Silicon Valley is just rammed with talent, right? And I get the call from the Queen. I mean, the Queen's representative.
Yes.
And by the way, the certificate, which is is signed by the sovereign's command. It's
That's cool.
Wow. to order that this person been nominated. But anyways, I felt like they want me. I don't feel like I have anything to add to California. It's just rammed with talent, but Britain is still.
You felt valued. Yeah.
So.
There's something about that. There's something about like calibrating your own, like, because I feel that way about Chicago. Like I didn't grow up in Chicago. I moved to Chicago. I found my place in Chicago. And I feel like
you found your place. That's it.
I love that place and that place loves me. I really like it out here, but I sort of feel like I kind of care less if I was here or not.
Yeah, I know.
Whereas I can hear the cheering when I get off the plane in Chicago. I know it's not happening, but I can.
But it's amazing how that we all work to find our place, whether it's in industry or location or family or whatever it is. It's true.
And I think it's about the people, for me at least. It's almost always about the people. All right, so you're back in the UK, and
Atari. And then I started.
Can I ask a question?
I wanted to do venture. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, David. So this is probably not I always tell Alex I ask the most unclassy questions ever, and we just talked about this in the last one. So, I really curious. You're employee 11 at EA. Did you own part of EA? Did you get like shares in the company? And did they? Because I know they split like crazy over time, right?
Amazingly, that was one of Tripp's founding principles. He was like, our employees are going to own this company. So we had stock options, and that was starting to become the new thing in Silicon Valley, which now is pretty common, but not necessarily everyone. Even though I was low on the totem pole, I did get shares because at that time, everyone in the company got shares. And yeah, I mean, it definitely paid out over the 25 years that I was at EA because the company went public, and then, then it grew, and I was not quite half the revenue of the company, but none of the all of, like, saying it in a positive way, all of the kind of senior team started getting onto the regular kind of stock option program and stuff like that. So I had some freedom to be able to say I wanted to work, and we'd have to obviously trim down expenses if I didn't work, but it was possible. It was a good learning but also for startups, which is start controlling your cash flow when you don't have income, right? So that was a mistake. I spent a year not controlling and then we had to get rid of everything cash flow negative except my family. Everything else, get rid of all the toys, all of the, all the expensive hobbies, stop.
I can't do that.
But I started investing because I thought, it was interesting. I'd done a little bit, and then I started meeting VCs. I met the original VCs that invested in EA, and they had some very good advice. And then I started meeting the VCs in Europe, and I thought, okay, well, Europe's probably not as far ahead on VC, so maybe my kind of Silicon Valley experience would be useful, and particularly the gaming side. So I started pitching VCs, hey, you should do stuff in games, and I could come help you do that. I know the games industry, and I didn't know that much about VCs, so I got a lot of lunches. But what I came to realize later is that no, VCs don't really want to hire people because they have to then divide the pie. They want to kind of use people and kind of use your expertise, kind of bring you in around and bring you near the tent, but not kind of in the tent. Because if you're not helping them raise capital, or you kind of have unique access to deal flow that they don't otherwise have, they just kind of keep it kind of keep it in-house. So that's why venture firms are typically quite small in their partnerships. And so while I was working on that, I got a recruiter called me to say, hey, would you join the board of Infogram, who owned all the Atari marks? And I said, nah, I don't want to join the board of Infogram. That company's really messed up. And they said, then they called back and then they said, would you consider being the CEO of Atari, of Infogram? And then I knew they had all the Atari marks. And then I had this terrible confusion in my heart. I was like, Atari needs me to be the CEO. This is my job. And so I did something which I shouldn't have rationally done, but I did because I was so in love with Atari. And so I found myself in Lyon, France, at Infogram as the new CEO, trying to turn it around. And I have to just be honest and say I didn't. It was very hard. About a year into it, I had lunch with Larry, who was still the CEO of Atari, of Electronic Arts. I was trying to tell him the Atari Infogram story. And I said, Larry, I figured something out. My life at Electronic Arts was like being born in Disneyland in Anaheim and growing up and thinking it's sunny every day. There's no crime. There's fresh smell of fresh paint. Everyone's happy. And then one day you get thrown out of the gates and you're left in, kind of gang wars on the streets of LA.
That's Atari.
Oh man, that kind of Atari Infogram is Compton, huh? To EA's Anaheim.
Exactly.
Okay.
With the biggest wake up call was we had a big game release called Alone in the Dark, which was one of the kind of pretty good franchises.
Oh yeah.
And we had the sales forecasts, and I'm kind of slightly making up the numbers, so I don't remember exactly, but it was like for 3 million units. I was like, that's great. Maybe we should build. We don't want to run out, but we don't want to overshoot because you have to write off that inventory if it doesn't sell. So, maybe let's try maybe just over 3 million units. And they said, well, we don't have any lines of credit with the manufacturing companies, so we have to prepay for any units, and we only have enough cash to build like 1.5 million units. I was like, oh my God, cash is king. And at EA, when we needed cash, we called up the treasury and said, we just signed Formula One, wire over $5 million. And then 48 hours later, it was in the bank account. This was my first experience of realizing, okay, because when I was a kid at EA, when people were worried about cash flow, I didn't have to think about it. Suddenly I'm in the hot seat, and yeah. So it was a real tough, couple of years, and I was trying to pivot the business from old school to Atari I wanted Atari.com to be the place to go. You would go put that in your browser and play games. And we were trying to buy Unity, which at that time was just kind of getting some traction. I thought Unity would be like the virtual console. Oh, wow. People could develop in that environment. We would publish on the Atari.com website, and we'd be a pure digital play. The brand in the list of the world's top 100 brands, it was in the top 75, and there had been no marketing money spent on the brand for like 2 decades.
Yeah,
it's an incredible brand, and such positive affiliation. I thought it was going to be amazing.
What year is this? This is 2008.
2008 through 2000, maybe 09 to 11, but yeah, roughly that zone that you're talking about.
Yeah.
So we tried, it was 2008. You're right, because that was the global financial crisis. I started the beginning of that year, and we needed to raise like $150 million or something to turn it around, and then the world crashed, and we couldn't.
That is a good idea though, because everyone it is a browser, like Unity browser.
Yep.
Yeah. I think that
which is how I met Unity, and then I invested in Unity. This is how I started doing the investing piece.
Yeah.
Okay, so that kind of got you back into the thinking of maybe I should be investing and helping people that way.
That's right. And I'd invested in a small team that ended up doing so well. They were called Playfish, and they were building games on inside the Facebook canvas thing.
Yeah.
And I was doing the Atari CEO job. I invested also in Christian Sequestrali's business, and they were like making huge strides every month. And I was like, I'm turning around a broken ship that's half on fire and trying to deal with inventory problems at retail, and the minute retail sensed that I was trying to be the good guy and take back the stuff that wasn't selling, and because that's what we did at EA, and I didn't realize I didn't have a balance sheet big enough to do that, and so we sailed very close to bankruptcy. And I thought, great, my first CEO job, and I'm going to bankrupt a public company. That sounds really good. So,
yeah, that retail and distribution business is rough. I mean, they smell blood in the water. So, yeah, I don't miss it. I don't miss that part of the
I don't know either.
Right. So, I think we're just finally getting to your investment career. We've already got a little long, but so you have had some incredible hits, relationships, and I love working with you guys. It's just so smart and supportive. But I mean, you talked about Supercell, Playfish. What were some of the early investments that you were involved in? How'd they happen?
Yeah, so I think the very first investment in the game space I made was a company called Natural Motion, which started by making animation tools, kind of virtual data, virtual synthetic motion capture data, and then they started using some of those own tools to build some of their own games, and then started having some hits, and eventually
CSR Racing, right?
CSR Racing eventually led to CSR Racing, because that was when the App Store first opened. They had a monetization strategy, so it was one of the first big hits. And Zynga bought that company, which was fantastic, and started making you think, gosh, it's so much fun watching entrepreneurs sweat it out and stress. I can kind of go in, give them some good advice, buy them a dinner, and then go home and play with my kids. And then,
Cool.
And so we started seeing success, and it was an amazing vintage. It's in the vintage term used not only for wine, but also for like companies and eras. And so gaming, most of the big VCs were not doing much in games. They did in the past, and it didn't work out. And Zynga, ironically, even though it was eventually a big success, it came out and it was strong at first, but then tanked. And then all the VCs kind of thought, oh, this is a hits driven. It's a hit. The one liner was, it's a hits driven business, and we can't pick the hits, so we're not investing. And then I would counter to say, yes, it's a hits driven business. You therefore build a portfolio. Venture is a hits driven business. You are playing the hits business.
That's right.
So that was the kind of confusion. They were trying to do rifle shots, picking the winner, and of course, guess what? It's really hard. And so I started investing out of my own capital, and then I realized that it was really hard for entrepreneurs to raise from traditional VC. So then it made sense to say, well, maybe if we had a dedicated fund for the games industry, since we're kind of pretend VCs, we're really game guys, let's merge these two worlds and take our connections. So David Laukey, who EA had acquired because he built Renderware and the Burnout franchise. So Criterion was the Criterion, exactly, was the company that had all those. I really enjoyed him. He was like the smartest person I had met at EA, and he had gone back to, he was living in England. So I thought, I'll meet up with David, and he's so smart, he'll help me figure this out. And so we got a little group together to start raising capital, and our Rolodex was really the games industry. So we had game companies and kind of executives that had made money from the games industry invest, and we put our first kind of couple funds together. But during that build-up time, we started investing in Supercell, Unity, I mentioned Natural Motion, and lots of others. I think we've done about 70 investments in total over the kind of 12 years, but who can remember the ones that didn't work out, right? But you remember the ones like Supercell guys were just unbelievable. Not only the nicest people on earth, but I think the Accel ended up investing, and they said it was they've invested in Facebook and all kinds of companies. It was the fastest company to $1 billion they've ever invested in history.
Wow.
It was the games industry. And so suddenly the games industry was hot, and now tens of billions of pounds and dollars and money have kind of poured into the games industry. If you look at all the venture money, China, the US, Europe, it's huge,
It
and
is-
then
it is
accelerated
interesting.
by COVID.
Yeah,
Sorry,
it's interesting.
sorry.
You talk about there was a wave of venture investing like in the pre Zynga IPO era that kind of got hot and cooled a bit, and then kind of in the right around COVID got hot again, and it feels to me like maybe it sort of post COVID's kind of cooled a little bit. Is it coming back? Is it going to get hot again?
It feels like it's coming back. Well, let's see if it's more sensible or not. But I think teams are the big shift is productivity of the teams. They are building products that customers play with much faster. We've been through a 5-year period where we basically, the venture industry started funding huge game development cycles, $100 million in 5 years. And even the big successful game companies don't do that. They iterate with franchises they know are going to work. Very few people spend 100 million plus on something that they're just taking a flyer on.
Yeah,
And because you can't afford many of those to go under. And we've seen some famous ones from big companies not make it. And this is one of the criticisms, but one of the realities. But people are like sick of the franchise model, but it's these are real companies with real grandma's pension funds, and they just can't throw everything against the wall and risk it all every year. So
not everything could be a moonshot. Yeah.
So it's changed, but it has. So we're in faster cycle time now. People are quicker to profitability, not necessarily quicker to unicorn status, but quicker to survivability, which is a different state.
Unicorn status?
Something that would be worth $1 billion or more. So like what Supercell turned into and what Unity turned into. Supercell, like 3 years into it. I mean, it was just crazy. It's more typical that a business might take 10 years. And you might know in 5 years, this is going to go somewhere big. And then another 5 years, it is big. Yeah.
Well, all right, David. I've kept you way long.
Well, it's so fun to go think about the fun industry that we're all in.
It's incredible to just think that all of this history that we just talked about, from the putting it in a floppy disk in a Ziploc bag
with a hole through it,
to multi-billion-dollar companies that are global and has more revenue than any other media. That whole period of time is like a few decades.
Yeah, they got to make a movie
and you compare that against like every other energy, transportation, every other industry. It's like we're just getting started.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, I don't know how long it was from first flight to Concorde. Was it 100 years? That's a pretty cool timeline.
Yeah. And I think the Concorde coming back.
They were talking about supersonic flights. Yeah, not Concorde, but
okay. That's what I thought.
There's a U.S. startup.
I wouldn't mind a teleporter. It's like,
no.
Would you use a teleporter if the teleporter was like it disassembled you and then it reassembled you somewhere else? So it's like it's unclear if that really is you. But
thank God for Star Trek. We wouldn't have anything. We wouldn't have flip phones. We wouldn't have DVDs. We wouldn't have.
But you wouldn't use a teleporter.
Well, teleporters are last on the list. Now that AI is doing the Star Trek computer, the last thing to achieve is teleportation.
I would never use a teleporter. How do you know it's you on the other end?
It's not really. I mean, but how do you know anything? It's like it's just existential, Aaron. You just got to make the leap. All right, David, a pleasure hanging out.
Nice meeting you. Great story.
We're gonna get to hang out in person next week over at Gamescom. Really looking forward to that.
Me too. Looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to meeting you in person, Aaron.
Oh, someday, yes. I'm not going to Gamescom.
Magnolia.
Yeah, Magnolia, Texas.
Yeah. You come on down we'll get some barbecue. It'll be a good time.
Not too far from Mississippi.
We'll shoot some guns. It'll be great.
Oh, God. All right.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks again. We'll see you around.
See ya.
Thank you for listening to the Fourth Curtain Podcast. Visit us at thefourthcurtain.com to find our monthly newsletter and support the show via Patreon. The Fourth Curtain Podcast is a production of Fourth Curtain Media. Lovingly edited by Bryen Hensley of Noise Floor Sound Solutions. Video production by Sarkis Grigorian. Production support by Kimya Taheri. With community management by Doug Zartman and art production by Paul Russel. Thanks again for listening.